Hello and welcome to opening trap number 21. My name is Mauri and this is the Blackburne Shilling trap. So the trap is named after the strong English player Joseph Henry Blackburne, who we see here. And legend has it that every time he won a game with this trap in cafes, he won 1 shilling. Now let's go over to the analysis board and check out this trap in action. So after e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, it is black who is going to do this trick, and he's going to play knight d4. So this is the trap. And white might be thinking, now I can take a pawn on e5. And if he does, he has fallen into the trap. Before I show you what happens after knight takes e5, let's just look at white's other options, because obviously he has better options than falling into a trap. And the best one is considered to simply take the knight on d4, and after e takes d4 you can castle, and white is better. So I did a sample line with knight f6, rook e1, d6, c3, and after d takes c3, white has the clever move queen b3, targeting f7, and white is just doing very well in this line. Other options for white after knight to d4 are to simply castle, and white is doing well. He can play the move c3, and he can even play the move knight to c3, and in all cases white is at least a little bit better. So now let's look at the actual trap. After bishop c4, knight d4, white is now going to fall for this trap with the move knight takes e5. So it looks already a little bit good for white, you might think, because you just won a pawn and you're targeting f7. But the move queen g5 is going to be very uncomfortable for white, and I'm going to show you why. So what are white's options? Well, the knight on e5 is hanging, but also the pawn on g2 is hanging. So white obviously doesn't want to lose that knight, so he could take on f7, and that's what he's going to do. And there are two ways of taking on f7. He could take with a knight, and that is the main line of the trap. But he could also take with a bishop, and that's a better move for white actually. After bishop takes f7, check, king d8. The pawn on g2 is hanging, the knight is hanging, and white now shouldn't lose the pawn because he's going to get into a lot of trouble if he does. So best for him is to castle and give back the knight. And black is a little bit better, but the game just goes on, and who knows what's going to happen from here. Black is better, he has the better chances, but it's not over by any means. So now to the main line of the trap. After queen g5, white now is going to take on f7, and if he hasn't seen this before, he might still be very happy, because he might be thinking, I'm forking the queen and the rook, and I've won a couple of pawns. Life is good. Except life isn't very good for white here, because now comes the move queen takes g2. And now let's look at white's options. The rook on h1 is hanging, and the black rook on h8 is hanging. So what can white do? If he takes the rook on h8, there is a funny line that I want to show you in just a moment that isn't going to end well for white. And also he can just move his rook on h1 to f1, but that also isn't going to end very well. So after rook f1, what will black do? Well, he takes on e4 check, and so now white's options are very limited. He can block the check with either the queen or the bishop. Obviously he doesn't want to lose his queen, because after this black simply just takes and takes and is winning. But the other option, bishop e2, ends with the move knight to f3, which is checkmate, and it's a smothered mate. So that is the main line of the trap, mate in 7 for black. It's a very nice smothered mate. I do want to show you the other line after queen takes g2 if white now decides to take the rook on h8. There is a really funny line there as well. So then black, of course, takes on h1, check. White has to block. Black comes back to e4 with check. And now, obviously, white doesn't want to play the move queen e2, loses the queen, so he plays bishop e2. And now black has the rather obvious winning move, knight takes c2 check. And if white takes, then he loses the queen. And if he plays king f1, then it's mate queen h1. So this obviously isn't any good for white. And in this position here, I checked this with a computer, and there is actually an even stronger move than knight takes c2, which is bishop c5. And it's a funny line because white has so many options. It's just that none of them are going to save him, and it's going to end with mate in just a few more moves. So the sample line that I want to show you is after d3. And now comes knight f3 check. Your only option is to play king f1. Your bishop is pinned, so king f1. And now a very nice move, queen h4. So the threat here is, amongst many other threats, is queen takes f2. And let's say you decide to give your queen and defend the square, then queen h3 mate. Black doesn't even have to take the queen. And all of white's other options are equally bad. For example, bishop takes f3. Of course, there's the mate on f2. If he tries to run away with king g2, then we just take on f2. And after king h1, there's queen takes h2 mate. And after king h3, now black mates in one with the move d6, or d5 would have done the same job. So let's just look at the main line of this trap one more time from the start. e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4. Now black springs the trap with knight d4. And here's where white should just take the knight and not the pawn, because after knight takes e5, queen g5, knight takes f7, queen takes g2, white is lost after any move. We've seen what happens if he takes on h8, and we've also seen the main line here, rook f1, queen takes e4, bishop e2, and knight f3 smothered mates. So this is a very nice trap. The, I guess, only drawback of this trap is that the move knight d4 is actually not a very good move, because black is breaking one of the opening principles, which says don't move the same piece twice in the opening. But apart from that, it is a nice trap that you might want to try as black. All right, now that's it, and I thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.